no, not the cicadas. As always, let me know when Rosemary's there. I always worry somebody will forget.
One in 3 adults has prediabetes. 1 in 3. That means it could be you, your football buddy, your football buddy, or you, your best man, your worst man, you, your dog walker, your cat jogger. While 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, with early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and its prediabetes awareness partners.
Hello, everyone. From the Watchdog, I'm the Storm Tracker, Darnell Foster. With a look at your local weather forecast for your Thursday, mostly cloudy with a few scattered showers, maybe a rumble of thunder. A daytime high of 72. Scattered showers likely through the evening and overnight with temperatures down to about 61 degrees. You'll see mostly cloudy skies with a few widely scattered thunderstorms for your Friday, with highs in the mid to upper 70s. Have yourself a great day, everyone. From the Watchdog, I'm Darnell Foster.
The views and opinions expressed on the following program are not necessarily those of this station or its sponsors.
Opinions, rants, commentary, and interviews. Plus, your complete morning news, weather, and sports. This is the Watchdog Morning Show with Howard Monroe in the 100 Days of Summer.
Yeah, it doesn't feel, well, I guess it feels like summer outside, but it's the dark for strunk kind of summer. 65 degrees at the Wheeling, Ohio County Airport. Still 64 here at my home studio, and 64 at the Robinson Autograph Studios downtown Wheeling. In the heart of the Ohio Valley, it is cloudy outside, and we are looking for the rain to probably begin to start in at least some parts of our area sometime in this next half hour. So, again, not going to be the world's greatest day to go out to the playground or get the grass cut, but it's going to be a warm day, okay, 72 or so, before the day is over and done with. 8:10 in the morning here on the Watchdog Morning Show. Couple of business-oriented stories just to take a second or two to talk about, Biffy. For those who have been hoping that Jamboree in the Hills is going to come back someday, Jambo will return. I think we maybe have seen the final death knell this week or this past week. You probably saw the story, Biff, that the Jambo site over in St. Clairsville has been sold to Roger Barrick and his family, $1.3 million. If that name sounds familiar, he's the guy that bought the Bel Air Bridge all those many years ago, and still owns it, I guess, still owns the Bel Air Bridge, and took a beating for it. I mean, the general public really did. But apparently he bought the 210-acre site in Belmont County on which Jamboree in the Hills had been held. And most of the folks who have any sense of this at all, there's been no public comment about what the plans are for the Jambo site. But everybody who has commented, everything from Belmont County commissioners to some of the folks involved in development in Belmont County and so on, are saying it ain't going to be an entertainment venue. Jambo is not coming back. So I think if there were folks, Biffy, who were hoping that maybe someday, this to me is the final nail in the coffin. There is not going to be another Jamboree in the Hills. Now, we still have Blame My Roots, which is getting bigger and bigger and growing, and that's a good news. But if you're hoping Jambo is going to come back, I think the sale of the property is probably a good sign that it's just plain not going to happen.
I think.
Go ahead, Biffy.
No, I was going to say. I think what we're getting at is all you're going to have now are the memories.
Yes.
That's it.
Yep.
I mean, just memories of that site, and like you said, we've got the Blame My Roots, and hopefully it can take off into something else. But I think the Jamboree as we know it, unfortunately, and this I think put an end to it.
Yeah, I mean, I felt all along that it was over, it was done with when they made the first year they announced no Jamboree. That was kind of like, you got the sense maybe it was a pause. And of course, last year it was a pandemic year, but I've always felt all along that it's just, for the owners, it had outlived its usefulness. I think the thing that we kept always forgetting over and over again is that it was a business. Everybody, oh my God, it's a part of our community. We love it and we want it. All of that's true, but for the owners, and I don't blame them. I don't blame them one little bit. For the owners, it's a business. Business just wasn't making sense after a while.
And I tell you what, though, that's one hell of a piece of property over there.
There's some talk that it could perhaps be turned into housing. Belmont County always needs housing. I wouldn't be surprised to see it some kind of industrial park or a gas, for an oil and gas industry or something. I have no inside info on that. I'm just talking out loud on that, but I think that's a possibility. But again, my point, for those who say, oh, someday Jambo will come back, it may come back. I mean, I'm never say never, but it ain't going to come back at this site. I don't think that's ever going to happen again. And one other real quick business-related story, only because it says to me this company is doing well enough to expand. Respecs, Biffy, the Respecs grocery stores are expanding. Now, not here in the local area, but they have added 3 new locations in Scio, Ohio, Sugar Creek, and New Cumberston. And to me, what that is to me is a positive sign that Respecs is a strong enough business to grow. And that's good. I'm a big fan of Respecs. I love that we have Respecs and Kroger and Aldi. We have a lot of different grocery shopping options around here. Would love a Whole Foods, but I suppose that's not going to happen. But I wanted to comment on this story only because to me it says Respecs is strong enough to be able to be growing. And when you're strong enough to be able to be growing, it means you're probably going to be around for a while. So congratulations to the Respecs family for buying 3. They bought out a company, the Baker's IGA stores that were in 3 locations. So congratulations to that. 8:15 Watchdog Morning Show. Must have been a couple weeks ago, I guess. I saw that Wheeling Councilwoman Rosemary Ketchum had done what was called a walkabout in South Wheeling, and she got together some of her constituents in that area, and they just kind of walked through South Wheeling and looked at the neighborhood and kind of got an actual real on the ground feel for what is happening. Talked about what could be happening. It struck my interest when that happened because my wife and I have been driving around South Wheeling literally the day before, and I was just noting that there's some parts of that neighborhood that I think are trying to revitalize themselves, and others that still are going downhill. So that South Wheeling walkabout caught me, and then more recently, Rosemary Ketchum did a walkabout in Center Wheeling, and I think these are really, really useful concepts. Just getting the neighbors together, people in a ward, and walk around and look at things. I asked Rosemary Ketchum to join us this morning to talk about it. Rosemary, good morning. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Howard. Thanks for having me on.
So what prompted this? What was your idea about walkabouts?
Well, I think you really said it. Folks really enjoy being in person, particularly after a pandemic or after the height of a pandemic. And I was struggling to find a way to really engage with constituents in a way that felt real and in person and effective. So I couldn't think of a better way to do that than to actually gather in our neighborhoods and walk around and look at our community.
One of the things that I often think we forget in the city, we sort of in general forget, is that we really are a city of neighborhoods. I know as I helped to work on the city's comprehensive plan, that's something I kept wanting to make sure that always kept front and center. We have a really variety of distinct and different neighborhoods. In your ward, Ward 3, you have several very distinct and different neighborhoods, each of which have their own set of problems and positive things.
Correct. Yeah, we have East Wheeling, South Wheeling, Center Wheeling, and Mozart. And if you know anything about any of those communities, you know that they're very different. However, in these walkabouts, we are learning that while the geography is somewhat different, some of the issues are different, and of course the people who live in these neighborhoods are different, there are through lines in some of the issues that they are experiencing. So far we've had a South Wheeling and Center Wheeling walkabout. We plan to have East Wheeling and Mozart very soon. And so far, some of those through lines include, increased vacant property and dilapidated properties that people are really concerned about. People are also interested in beautification. People want to see public art in their communities and hanging flower baskets and things like this. But also, folks want to, a more nebulous concept. Folks are interested in community pride. And they feel like, in the past couple years, that has been lost in some of their neighborhoods. So what we can do as a council to kind of bring back that community pride, that sense of community pride, is going to be really important moving forward.
I would completely agree with you. Center Wheeling is an interesting area, and let's talk about that just for a second, because it really is one of the city's more vibrant areas. I mean, there's been a lot of great success in Center Wheeling. In a second, we'll talk about some of the problems that you and the folks who walked around saw, but I mean, Center Wheeling really is kind of the success story neighborhood, I think, in the city of Wheeling right now.
I love Center Wheeling. I just spent my afternoon talking with business owners yesterday in Center Wheeling about what we can do to enhance the neighborhood, particularly the small business community, particularly after a pandemic, of course. But I agree. I think that Center Wheeling is a fabulous community. After the hospital closed, I think that really did, scare some folks who own businesses and even rent properties in that neighborhood, because that occupies a huge footprint, and a lot of employees, left the community at that point. So while I do agree that Center Wheeling is one of our greatest neighborhoods, I think she needs a little help, and I'm very excited to give as much time and energy to Center Wheeling, particularly in regards to Center Market, but really the neighborhood writ large, because it has one of the greatest, it has some of the greatest potential of any neighborhood in our city.
One of the things I like about Center Wheeling is that it kind of grew organically. Yes, the city created the Center Market Commission. Yes, the city has put a lot into the market itself. But really, it began with just individual businesses beginning to slowly but surely, and I'm going back maybe 10 years, but you began to see a couple more businesses opening up. And I'm not just talking about the Market House. I'm talking about the overall Center Wheeling. And slowly but surely, without sort of a giant master plan, it just kind of developed, which is, to me, kind of neat. It developed organically. Now, yes, the city has been helping, and yes, it has to help maybe even more now with the closure of OVMC, because the clientele was taken away. But I like the fact that it's a neighborhood that didn't need a big city master plan to begin with. It just began to build itself.
Correct. And I think that really shows that the neighbors and the business owners are innovative and determined to not just make a living, but create a community that can thrive. But as a city, we can always do our part, and we can always do more. I met with business owners yesterday, and they expressed excitement for the future, but some concern about planning and strategy and marketing, and what does Center Wheeling look like to the rest of the city and even the rest of the Ohio Valley, and how do we ensure that when folks think about tourism and travel and eating out and nightlife, they think in part Center Wheeling. So we really want to make sure that we build strategy and marketing around that so that those folks can thrive even more than they have before.
I'm always intrigued by what's next. That's a theme that I use all the time. I'm wondering what the next phase of Center Wheeling, and maybe in this case I'm really talking specifically about around the Center Market. I'm wondering what the next phase of the Center Market will be. I mean, the businesses, the storefronts are pretty full. You have a lot of people there. There is a number of different restaurants there. What's the next step? And I don't have any suggestions or answers or thoughts. I'm just sort of ruminating out loud. But I wonder what's the next step for the Center Market, Center Wheeling area.
Well, interestingly, you bring that up in regards to the Market House. They are starting Center Market Sundays, which will begin on June 6th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. And a whole host of businesses have kind of banded together and decided that they are going to stay open on Sunday, even for that period of time, without the Market House necessarily being open. Coleman's will not be open that time. But I think, folks, and I think this is a generational thing to some extent, but folks will not go to Center Market on Sunday because they assume if Coleman's closed, then there's nothing to do down there. And I know that's a point of frustration for some of the business owners because they think, rightly so, that, hey, if I'm open on a Sunday, why shouldn't folks feel compelled to come down and enjoy the Center Market? And I think it's an interesting Ohio Valley mindset because I just returned from Denver, and Denver is open 24 hours. Even on a Sunday, you can find nightlife and excitement in there downtown. But that's different in Wheeling. So I'm very excited for Center Market to take that step and to hopefully change that mindset that Wheeling is actually a place that is open 7 days a week and for not maybe 24 hours, but close to it.
Yeah, I had not heard about the Center Market. I think that's a great idea. After church on Sundays, I preach, and when I'm done, I just sort of drive around the area for just to kind of clear my head and stuff. Often drive through Center Wheeling on late Sunday morning, early Sunday afternoon. And I often think it's kind of sad there isn't a lot of activity down there, and you would think there would be and could be. It could be a good place to go for lunch, and if you go for lunch for Sunday lunch, maybe you could have a little bit of shopping and so on. So I think this is a great idea. I had not heard about it until you just mentioned it. The Center Market Sundays make a lot of sense to me.
Absolutely. And during our walkabouts, after, we would exhaust ourselves walking around the community, we would engage in a visioning session. I brought out a whiteboard and some dry erase markers, and we would jot down our ideas. We covered 3 topics, and those were, for example, Center Wheeling. What does Center Wheeling need? What does Center Wheeling have? And what is Center Wheeling? A kind of visioning session around adjectives that best describe the neighborhood to folks. And in the need component, we would talk about most of the negative things. Center Wheeling needs the property owner accountability. Center Wheeling needs a better marketing strategy. Center Wheeling needs our alleys page, things like this. And then in the want, Center Market being open was part of that. Center Market has a beautiful market, but we need consistency. And it would be great when somebody new to town comes to visit. We can say, go to the market; they will be open. And I think that's changing for the better. And that's just, I think that's just part of our culture moving forward.
I love driving through Center Wheeling on a Friday night or a Saturday night and actually seeing people there and going into the restaurants and, different places. I am old enough to remember that my Friday night drives and Saturday night drives through Center Wheeling, most of the businesses that I saw were young ladies standing on a street corner for a long time. You know what I'm saying? And it really is a neighborhood that's made a big transition. And I love seeing, people kind of dressed up and not dressed up, but you know what I mean, going out for dinner and going out for fun. It's really, it's been a big deal. Now, South Wheeling, and we're talking to Wheeling Councilwoman Rosemary Ketchum here on the Watchdog Morning Show, by the way, 64 degrees, 826. Rosemary, South Wheeling, a little different neighborhood. South Wheeling, at least its roots are very ethnic, and it has not yet begun the significant revitalization that Center Market has. Are those fair comments?
I think they are fair comments, yes. South Wheeling is one of, if not our most unique neighborhood. It's enormous. If you've ever walked South Wheeling, you'll know it. And it is a neighborhood that is complex and fascinating, and I love it so much. I've never lived in South Wheeling, but so many of the folks that I get to speak to who represent South Wheeling and are engaged, they love it in a way that I don't think other people love their communities. And it's a way that's almost personified. South Wheeling is almost a person to many of these residents, and that is why they love it and care for it so much. And that is also why they are so frustrated, historically with the direction or lack of development or care of South Wheeling. And so South Wheeling was our first visioning walkabout session, and it was really enlightening, and it was hosted by the Elks, which was are some incredible folks, and we had our Parks and Rec director Rochelle Berry help us give us some updates on Pulaski Field and some of the developments and updates that are happening there, and people were very excited about that, but they also brought up issues with South Wheeling being essentially a food desert. As folks remember, way back there was an IGA and then a Kroger in Benwood that has been closed for many years now, and that was primarily the place that people in South Wheeling would go. But now, if you don't have a vehicle or don't have consistent, reliable transportation, there isn't a place to get groceries from South Wheeling besides maybe Jebbia's or a convenience store. And that's frustrating for some residents. Of course, dilapidated and vacant properties has always been a concern. And I think, I believe the onus, of course, in many ways is on the city. And historically, I don't think we've done enough to really push for property owner accountability and take care of these properties before they became blighted problem properties. But here we are. We didn't get here overnight, and it's going to take maybe even longer to get us out of that. But there are some things happening in South Wheeling that are exciting. We have some WODA housing development, senior housing happening on the 37th block. We've had the LaBelle Green Apartments and now Hobbs Green Apartments, taking shape. So those are exciting developments that I don't want to, that I do want to acknowledge. But the concerns of residents are completely valid and something that we really, really need to take into account. And lastly, folks are really interested in beautification. Like I said before, they want to see public art. They want to see, trash cans in their neighborhood that look nice, that aren't just functional. And they want to see flower baskets. And that's all about, the culture and the feeling of your neighborhood. And some folks may think it sounds superficial or not important, but I would disagree and say that it is just as important as anything else.
Drawing a distinction between Center Wheeling and South Wheeling, one of the distinctions is Center Wheeling, by virtue of the center market, has kind of a nucleus, kind of has a center, kind of has a something around which the rest of the neighborhood can revolve. South Wheeling does not really have that. And in point of fact, South Wheeling is, by design, a mixture of residential and industrial and other forms of buildings. So it doesn't have that consistency of use that certain other neighborhoods do, which is can make for a thriving neighborhood, but also can be a challenge in the neighborhood.
Correct. I think that the uniqueness there and kind of the diversification in geography or business opportunity gives an opportunity for development, and I think that we're seeing that in regards to housing. But yeah, South Wheeling was built as a working class neighborhood, and if you get a chance to walk through it, even if you get a chance to look at the map, it's fascinating to see how grid-like South Wheeling is. It's a well-built neighborhood, and I know folks who live in other neighborhoods in the city, they're not as well built. They're a little wonky, and streets go, all kinds of ways. But South Wheeling is a really well-built community on a grid, and I think if I were a developer and I were interested in building something in a community that made sense, I think I would choose South Wheeling. And as a council person, I have that responsibility and obligation to work with our city administration to ensure that South Wheeling is a place where development is possible and welcome, and a place where residents feel as if development complements their life rather than competes against it. So that's been a very exciting conversation to have with residents and city admin, and very hopeful for the future of the neighborhood.
I am not familiar enough with the Mozart section of Wheeling that's in the city to offer much comment there. But the other neighborhood that's in your ward, Ward 3, that I suspect will prove challenging and interesting when you do the walkabout is East Wheeling. It has its own unique character, but it distinctly has problems.
So, correct. Mozart is a lovely community. It's very different than the other three neighborhoods. The Mozart Volunteer Fire Department just celebrated their 110th anniversary, so shout out to Chief Miller. So they have distinct problems. The latest problem in Mozart, raccoons opening garbage cans and things like that because they're a little farther out there. But you're right about East Wheeling. East Wheeling has an incredible history, but a history that is, I think, steeped in racism. East Wheeling is a red line community. And if folks aren't familiar with what redlining is, essentially, banks and loan officers would refuse to loan African American folks money to buy houses in certain areas. And so after a while, they would only accept loans for specific neighborhoods. And East Wheeling was one of those neighborhoods. I live in East Wheeling. It's a vibrant community. I love it so much. I've lived throughout the city of Wheeling. It's the best place I've lived thus far. And yet there are issues that we need to address. Again, I sound like I'm beating the same drum, but vacant properties is a huge issue. We have issues with, substance use disorder around the city. But I think in Ward 3 and Ward 2, those are somewhat concentrated or perhaps just more visible. Of course, beautification is an important thing. But one of the projects that I've been most passionate about is the Nelson Jordan Center. And the Nelson Jordan Center is a recreation center. It's the only city-owned recreation center that we have. And it is an historically black recreation center. And that is how it was built. And however, but for many years it has been neglected and not acknowledged, frankly, by many past city councilors and city folks. But we are finally, I think, seeing some long due investment in the Nelson Jordan Center, and I think that is, of course, functionally, important to ensure. But I think culturally, it also, I think, is providing some optimism to folks in the community. And I don't want to say that just throwing a couple dollars at a center is going to, fix our problems or make people feel better or trust the system again. But I think in part it is about trust building. And I think that's a through line in every neighborhood across the city. Building greater trust and ensuring that folks feel engaged and part of the process of building a future. And that's what I'm trying to do here in Ward 3.
You'll learn more about it and talk more about it as you do a walkabout there. But I'm always fascinated by folks who grew up in East Wheeling, I'm talking about decades ago, talk about a different East Wheeling than we are used to seeing today. I mean, East Wheeling was a neighborhood that folks who grew up in it were really loved their neighborhood. There was a lot of activity there, businesses and so on, neighborhood businesses and so on. And then somewhere along the way, and I think it did have something to do with racism and so on, but troubles began to arise. And the neighborhood that we see today and we think about today is very different than the neighborhood I hear people talk about when they grew up in that neighborhood in, the 50s or 60s.
That's an interesting perspective. I am 27, and I didn't grow up in Wheeling. I've been here for just over 10 years. And so I have that new perspective of East Wheeling, of what it is today. And I love listening to the history and the stories. I meet with folks all the time who are able to share those stories with me. But you're right. When I talk to somebody, and typically those are folks over 55, and I say, I live on 14th Street in East Wheeling, they'll look at me a little strangely, and they'll say, is that okay? What is it like down there? Is it, is it safe? And I look at them strangely as if they're an alien because it doesn't make sense to me. And I say, well, of course, it's maybe one of the safer neighborhoods anywhere. And it's really cool and fun. And it reminds me of kind of like the Brooklyn of Wheeling. And I live across the street from, Good Mansion Wines. And if anybody's been there, that's a great place. And it's just the generational perspective of East Wheeling is really interesting and fascinating, and it has definitely changed. And to the chagrin of some folks, I think that some folks are worried that people are buying up properties and it doesn't resemble the way it used to, and that's a valid concern as well. That we are, people bring up the word gentrification, and I think we're a long ways from that. But I think folks are seeing the trend happen now. And even myself, I don't own property, and I'm kind of looking around and thinking, my goodness, I want to live in this neighborhood for a long time. I better buy something soon. But I think all of those are growing pains. And, for what it's worth, I think that, many of our neighborhoods have waited too long to grow. And it's finally happening slowly but surely. But we just want to make sure that residents, feel part of that growth and not like they're on the outside.
Rosemary, I appreciate your time today, and I love the walkabout idea because it puts you and the neighbors together, face-to-face, ground level. Sometimes we have public meetings and we put maps on walls and we talk about things, but, a walk through a neighborhood can tell you a lot that maps on the walls can't. So I think it's a great idea that you're engaging in, and I can tell from the conversation we've had, you've already learned a lot and will probably learn more as time goes by. So I appreciate the work that you're doing, and I appreciate your time this morning. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Howard. I appreciate it.
All right, we'll talk again soon. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Rosemary Ketchum, Wheeling's 3rd Ward Councilwoman, doing walkabouts. The South Wheeling one caught my attention first, only because literally the day she was doing it, my wife and I had driven through South Wheeling, and we're taking a look at the different aspects of it and wondering where South Wheeling was going to go, how's it going to develop next. And then she also moved to a walkabout of Center Wheeling, I think it was last week. And we've talked about visioning in the city a good bit. I talked about with the mayor earlier this week. I think this is a good way to get a vision for individual neighborhoods. And if you've been with me for a long time, I'm a big believer in the neighborhood aspect of the city of Wheeling. Neighborhoods, we have a variety of really distinct and different neighborhoods. Biff, you're an island rat, and island rats love their community on Wheeling Island, right?
We do. What's left of it anyway?
Well,
I mean, it's funny. My aunt and uncle they live down south now, and they were up over the Memorial Day weekend, and before they left to head back down south, my dad told my uncle, he said, "Hey," he said, "go on Virginia Street on the island." He goes, "when you leave," he said, "drive past there and look at it." He goes, "You won't believe what it looks like now." And I can't tell you how many streets, at least on the south end, where there are literally, if it weren't for one or two houses or, something else there, that whole streets would literally be nothing but empty lots.
Yep.
I mean, it's 20, even probably not even 20 years. I mean, you go back and you tell someone what the island looks like now, and they probably wouldn't believe it until they actually drove by and seen what's there.
And you're right. It's a great example. And other neighborhoods are very much like that. We talked about South Wheeling a minute or two ago. I think South Wheeling is very much the same. The city needs to focus. Well, I guess I'll say the city. There needs to be more focus on the individual neighborhoods and retaining the integrity of those neighborhoods as they were intended to be. And if the neighborhood has changed, then we've got to figure out how does it change and what do we want to do to make it vibrant again. And I think that's, again, I'm just a big believer. Every neighborhood of the city has its unique history and its unique place, whether it's Warwood or Wheeling Island or South Wheeling or Elm Grove or Woodsdale. There's a need to recognize the character of the neighborhoods and to make sure those characters stay or return to what they were or move forward in a very positive way. And some neighborhoods are not getting that attention. Now, I think Councilman Ben Seidler is trying to do a lot of cleanup on the island, so I give him a lot of credit for that. The island has been, quite frankly, Biff, other than the casino, neglected for a long time.
Oh, and all you need to do is, drive past the stadium and look at they're finally working on the old expo hall, getting some of that out of there. But I mean that's set now for what was that? 2 years, I think it was the was it New Year's Eve
fire, right?
Yeah,
2 years ago. Yeah,
2019. So until just recently, I mean that building had sat there. You look at some of the other places and just the weeds and stuff that are growing that don't get taken care of and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean it's getting better.
It's getting better, but it needs more focus and more attention. And other neighborhoods do too, but that is one. All right, I'm dramatically behind time, of course. 17 to the hour on the Watchdog Morning Show. Got some news and sports to get to for you. I got actually Bill Cosby's back in the news. Bill Cosby. Y'all remember Bill Cosby, right? I got a Bill Cosby story I want to get to and a few other. Oh, and our kids get even Teddy gets an allowance. But there's at least one mom who says, no, don't pay him for doing chores. Pay them for doing their hobby. Oh, God, I would have been so happy if my parents had given me an allowance for just playing. We'll talk about that and more coming up on the Watchdog Morning Show.
The WTRF Channel 7 News Update is brought to you by Thomas Auto Centers, Mall Road, St. Clairsville. Get the best deal at Thomas Auto Centers.
Now it's time for your Valley, only on AM 1600.
Metro News Sports, good morning. I'm Kyle Wiggs, an old Big East basketball route.
I'm back, Biffy. I'm going to use that cut 16, I think, in this segment. Can you rent out condemned property? I would think the answer is no, but I really don't know. We can talk about it. We'll talk when we come back. Right. Probably be it would probably be the city solicitor that would be responsible, but okay, we'll talk when we come back. I don't have an answer, but I'll say I don't have an answer.
Wishing you a safe and healthy spring.
A serious injury from an accident can be just the start of your worries. What if you cannot return to work? How do you take care of your family if you're disabled? At Gelner Law Offices, we represent seriously injured people and understand their problem. We know how to get you fair compensation. We will work hard to make sure you get the money you deserve for your losses. Don't go it alone. If you're hurt in an accident, call us at 304-242-2900 or visit us at gelnerlaw.com.
We'd like to help.
Does your dog need groomed or walked? Are you looking for a pet sitter or dog boarding options? If so, call Dirty Paws, Wheeling's newest pet care service, providing the Ohio Valley with everyone's pet care needs. Check us out on Facebook at Dirty Paws WHG or call 304-639-7754.
New Belgium Fat Tire Amber Ale is now available in West Virginia and distributed locally by wine and beverage merchants. With its toasty and biscuit-like malt flavors blended perfectly with hoppy freshness, it's bound to become one of your new favorite craft beers. Fat Tire Amber Ale is now available at local retailers. Please don't drink and drive and drink responsibly. From your friends at Wine and Beverage Merchants.
Shady Side. The watchdog is protecting your yard. Join Howard Monroe, Hoppy Kercheval, Bill DeFabio, and Big Rick for the best live and local talk in the Upper Ohio Valley and beyond. Shady Side trusts the watchdog.
Miss a part of the show? Want to hear a segment again? Check out our podcast page at watchdognetwork.com. The Watchdog Morning Show with Howard Monroe continues.
Temperature rising a bit, 66 degrees at the Wheeling, Ohio County Airport, 64 here at my home studio in the Elm Grove section of Wheeling, 64 at the Robinson Auto Group Studios downtown Wheeling. In the heart of the Ohio Valley, cloudy and a little bit of rain has come down. Doesn't look like it's raining right now, but it was raining a little bit, just a little bit earlier. We could look for some rain throughout the day today, maybe even a thunderstorm activity later on this afternoon. So be aware of all that. 8 before the hour here on the Watchdog Morning Show. Oh, my.
Oh, God bless you.
And there must be pollen in the air. There must be pollen in the air, too. Jeez, sorry about that. Sorry about that. Hey, Jim and Shane have an auction coming up. Actually, two of them from the same estate. This coming Wednesday, the Frio Stack Auction Service is doing a real estate auction. It is the house at 27 Burkham Court, the estate of Jerry Anderson. That's a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house in the Elm Grove section of Wheeling. They got a sun porch, a half bath, 1,400 square feet of living space, detached garage. They'll be showing it at 4:30 next Wednesday. The auction's 6 o'clock sharp. If you would like a private showing before that, call the auction house at 233-3168 and schedule an appointment. And then the contents of the estate of Jerry Anderson will go up on an online-only auction, which the bidding, I'm not sure when the bidding will open, but it closes on Monday, June 21st. So you have little longer time for that, but the bidding will close on Monday, June 21st. They got toys, they got collectibles, all kinds of items. If you want to find furniture, if you want, a Man from Uncle costume. I would love that. I loved the Man from Uncle when I was a kid. Man from Uncle costume with mask. Would it be the Napoleon Solo mask or the Ilya Kuryakin mask? Robert Vaughn or David McCallum? That I would like. I would like that. Anyway, online auction for the contents, in-person auction for real estate next Wednesday is the real estate auction, and the online auction closes on the 21st. More info, FrioAuction.com. I would say it's FrioAndStack.com. That's a new website they got there. Okay. FrioAndStack.com to get more info on that. Biffy, we had a caller talking about neighborhood issues off the air. Is that right?
Yes. Then, oh, geez, losing my voice there for a second. I think.
There you go. So you're catching whatever I have here.
Yeah, at darn Paul, and wait till the weekend when it's muggy and everything.
Yep.
But no, didn't say what neighborhood they lived in, but if basically the question was if there is a piece of property in your neighborhood that is condemned, are you allowed to rent that piece of property out?
If it is literally condemned, and again, that's a legal term, if it is literally condemned, I would think you would not be allowed to rent that out. But I want to begin by saying I honestly don't know. Probably the city solicitor's office will give you better information about that, or the building inspection department can maybe give you better information about that. You can call Paula up there, and she could point you in the right direction in the building inspector's office of the city of Wheeling, or Rosemary might have an answer for you, or maybe have an answer for us if she's listening. She can text me. I don't. If a building has literally been condemned, now that I'm saying has been given a designation of a condemned building, as opposed to you are just saying, well, boy, that building is falling apart. I would think you couldn't rent it out. Oh, I don't know. We don't have these rentals. I think the answer is no. I'm not sure. The city solicitor may have a better answer for you, or the building inspector's department. Good question, fair question. I would just think the answer is no. That's the best I can tell you. And I appreciate your efforts at finding out. Thank you for calling us at 304-232-8255. Don't forget you can text me at 304-214-1600. We have not heard about Bill Cosby forever, Biffy.
No, we have not. It's been quiet.
Bill Cosby is still in prison, of course, for sexual crimes that he was found guilty of. And recently, Cosby was turned down for parole. And the reason was he refused to take part in a therapy program for sexually violent predators. He said, I'm not going to go. And that in itself was enough to deny him parole. O.J. Simpson, God, it's hard to believe O.J. Simpson wants to comment on Bill Cosby. O.J. Simpson said that Cosby should have done whatever it took, including taking these courses, if it would get him home sooner, if it would have gotten him to parole. But a spokesman for Bill Cosby says, Mr. Simpson was caught trying to retrieve stolen items unlawfully. That is the difference. Mr. Cosby has never admitted, nor has any evidence been presented to prove that Mr. Cosby drugged or raped women. The jury disagreed with you, sir. The jury disagreed with you. That's why he is in prison. But his spokesperson said, why would Mr. Cosby accept parole when we're waiting for the Supreme Court to issue a ruling any day now on an appeal that we hope will vacate his conviction or at least give him a new trial? And he went on to say, Mr. Simpson, being paroled is like being on a slave plantation. You are never free, and you will always be the property of your oppressor. Enjoy your golf game. A little jab there at OJ. I like that. Biffy, if I was caught, I hate to say this next phrase. I agree with O.J. Simpson.
When do you
Don't
think?
ever use that against me if I run for public office.
When do you think
I
you'd
agree
ever
with O.J.
say that
Simpson.
line?
Do whatever you need to do to get. I mean, don't lie, but I mean, go to the classes, take the classes. It doesn't mean that you can't appeal. It doesn't mean you can't have your conviction overturned or whatever. Go take the classes. I agree with O.J. Simpson. Whatever you could do legally to get yourself home sooner, I would certainly do. Anyways, we haven't had a Bill Cosby story for a long time, so there we do. Next hour, African American history. We don't really seem to know a lot about it. That was proven this week with the Tulsa Massacre. A lot of people went, I'll talk to Reverend Cummings about that next hour. 9 o'clock, Watchdog Morning Show.
The Watchdog is FM 98.1, AM 1600 WKKX Wheeling, FM 97.7, AM 1370 WVLY Moundsville.
The ABC News is brought to you by Thomas Auto Centers, Mall Road, St. Clairsville. Get the best deal at Thomas Auto Centers.
And once again, it was a small